Hey guys, welcome back. It's Ripe again, back with more entitled Karen stories. In this video, a Karen told the police that I am trespassing on my own farm, claiming that I am a thief. She then ended up assaulting me and I honestly have no idea what to do. Here is what happened. So everyone complains about how stupid people can be, but I think that is too simple and often insulting. Sometimes it can be incredibly intelligent people that do the dumbest thing. This is because, in my mind, the real issue is people's pride. No one is willing to look at themselves and criticize or question their gut reaction to situations, and they don't believe everyone else is in the supporting cast for their starring role. This usually leads to them resembling a starring role in slapstick comedy to give them the tiniest amount of credit, but this is probably not what they are wanting. I don't like to spend much time online even in this day and age, not because I'm old or incompetent, I'm only in my 30s and I spent enough time using technology in college to know my way around it. Still, I was raised in the countryside and spent my time farming as I grew up. My family did not own a farm or anything, we were just poor. I worked when I was younger just to be able to bring food home and later on to earn money for myself as well. When I went to university, it was only possible because of scholarships and I only went to study agriculture further. I know plenty of people who got the same degree as me that went on to make good money all over the industry with work-centric lifestyles or lifestyles that fit more with social norms. I know far fewer who went the same path that I did. I used connections from my degree and from my childhood working on farms to make some money and find a farm owner who was planning to part with his property. He couldn't upkeep it anymore and his family had all moved on to different jobs and even different states. He was thrilled when I came in with even just my meager offer that I could provide up front. Just the existence of my offer meant that he no longer had to capitulate to the company planning to commercialize the land that had long belonged to his family for a few generations. So I bought his place and even kept a small house on the property ready so he could live in it or visit it as he pleased. As much as he enjoyed the land, he didn't show up other than once in a blue moon because it was more satisfying for him to live with his family moving forward. All the neighboring farms were under the same pressure from the corporation planning to buy them out. They were steadily falling over the next 3 or 4 years as I situated myself on the land. I hired workers and made my living as well as theirs. I mostly was able to provide for myself off of my own land, so much of the rest of the money I made went towards the farm or towards savings. Even those farms in the neighborhood that were still owned by the original individuals were often not functional to the extent that mine was. I planned to move forward with my life just like I had dreamed, quiet countryside living, making a living off the land and building up young people in a way that only cooperating in backbreaking labor can. So when Karen showed up on my doorstep, I only thought it was odd because I had worked a deal with the real estate manager from the agricultural company, so they wouldn't come around and bother me so often anymore. Still, I dealt with them from time to time and figured I would be fine. I was in my garage loading up a truck with products to one of the farmers markets that I frequent and had left to grab some other goods when I spotted her on the porch. She was looking bewildered at my front door when I called out that I would be with her in a moment. I told her I just needed to load up one more box and I would speak to her. So I grabbed my extra crate of product and ducked back into my garage without paying attention to her reaction. I was situating everything when suddenly I heard, "You audacious crap!" She stood in the doorway to the garage with her hands on her hips. Confused, I simply replied, "Excuse me?" Suddenly she is stomping forward into my home and ranting. What kind of a person gets caught in the act of theft and simply asks their discoverer to wait while they load the last box? Not only that, but who has the gall to steal from an old man who is already having his land forced away from him by crappy corporate America? Or is this just another tactic to get him to finally give up and sell his land? By this point she had made it near me and reached into the tailgate to dump the last 2 boxes I had deposited there onto the ground. Can you not afford your food without terrorizing those less fortunate? I was mostly confused and shocked at first, but I cannot deny that pure disbelief nearly caused me to lash out when she dumped my goods on the ground. I knew better than to potentially worsen her absurd behavior by trying to hit her, so I simply backed up and crossed my arms. When she finally stopped her string of indignant questions to take a breath and look at me, I raised my eyebrows. "What?" she spat. "You must have the wrong farm. I have owned this farm for 4 years now. Not a chance. My phone took me here for wrong address." I knew that she had simply missed the driveway because that farm's connection to the main road was overgrown at this point. When her GPS tried to correct her, she probably just shut it off. That is the next farm over, and I've often run errands for the owner and given him groceries when they are needed. I would never consider stealing from him. Stop lying when I caught you red-handed. The cops are not going to listen to these lies any more than I have. I know my grandfather's farm. Considering the old man had hardly mentioned any granddaughters, I doubt she had even seen her grandfather's farm since she was a kid. You called them? They are on their way, so I just have to keep you from driving your truck out of the garage and they will have their proof. Then she spread her arms out to weakly block me from getting to the truck. And don't you dare think of unloading the goods. I wouldn't dare, I said with mock sincerity. I stuffed my hands in my pockets and went for the door. After a moment of audible confusion, she followed along. I walked to the driveway while she spouted that it was no use running off. My truck was still there, and she saw that it had plates. When I neared the end of the driveway, she seemed less confident and rushed around to stand in front of me. "I'm not going to let you leave," she said. "I just wish you were this energetic when it came to fighting your corporate America so your grandfather could keep his land. I'm not leaving, I just need to make sure that when the cops arrive at the wrong property, I can flag them down." I brushed past her and she yelled at my back, "Yeah, well, the truck will be enough evidence anyway." Just to toy with her, I threw back over my shoulder, what if that is his truck and I was planning to steal it too? At this point I was inside of the road and could see the police lights coming. I flagged down an officer and he came over. "Hey OP, do you know anything about this call about a thief on the old man's land?" I pointed at Karen with a thumb. I know she is the one who called it in, and that thief is not real. Karen's jaw dropped at this exchange. She saw the brief confusion on the cop's face as an opening for her to spin her yarn and started with, "This man is an owner of his own land and the old man's friend." Karen barely got her words through her gritted teeth. "No, this disgusting thief was stealing from my grandfather and didn't even have the decency to hide his crime when I caught him." Have you not questioned why this disgusting thief of yours has not even let his confidence falter while speaking to the police at the scene of the supposed crime? Karen sputtered for a bit, her face darkened, still not taking even a second to consider if she's possibly wrong. She tries to sound intimidating as she growls. "Even got the cops in on it, huh? This corruption is disgusting." Apparently, if the cops were not gonna help, it was time for her to take justice into her own hands. She swung her purse around and smashed it into my face. The thing was heavy enough to hurt like the devil, but luckily padded enough to spare me a broken nose. I was thrown off balance and a few moments later had the air knocked out of my lungs as I hit the ground when she bodily tackled me. I had not even taken my hands from my pocket, which made me helpless at this point, but I knew I had no need to do anything but bite my own pride back and bide my time. She was pulled off of me eventually and handcuffed for assault and battery. I cannot deny that I felt a bit of smug joy seeing her shoved into the back of a police car. The cop who witnessed the altercation took my statement after confirming that I was not hurt too badly and then shook his head and sighed before turning to get in his car and go back into the station. I had it in my mind to spare the poor woman any consequences besides the humiliation that she likely already felt. However, I avoided any decisions before I actually went and spoke to the old man next door and asked what he might want me to do. He started out apologizing until he saw that I was more in the mood for laughing even with my black eye. He explained that Karen had recently learned about the actual size of the offers for her grandfather's land from her mother, his daughter. She was likely coming to see if she could endear herself to him to get in on the money. But in his words, "I ain't that mentally decrepit yet, and if I was, I would have forgotten the face of the granddaughter who has not been out here since she wheedled her way out of visits since high school." At his request, I did press charges on her. Testimonies from me, him, and the cops who witnessed the assault were plenty to land her with fines, a couple months in county jail, and hours of community service that had to be done within the state, which she did not live in anymore, funnily enough. Just a legal slap on the wrist, but hopefully it gets her to think twice before she does something again to someone who does not remain quite as calm as I had every right not to. And the next one is titled, "Overheard my girlfriend say she would leave me for someone taller." And by the way, if you have watched until here, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because that would help me tremendously. Thank you so much. So my girlfriend and I have been dating for almost 3 years. Last night she had some friends over after she finished work. For context, I work from home, so I only left my office to be formal and say hello and then continued working. It was easy to hear the conversations they were having even though my office is down the hall. I then heard my girlfriend mention that she would leave me for a taller man. Her friends made a comment on how I was a lot shorter than her ex-boyfriend. My girlfriend responded, "If only he was as tall as my ex, he'd be 10 times better. If I could find someone taller than him, I would." I guess I should mention my girlfriend is barely 4'11" in shoes, I'm 5'9". The issue is not the height but the fact that she would leave me for something so trivial. I talked to her about it since and said she didn't mean anything by it, just that she always dated taller men. She has since apologized multiple times. Is this a red flag of any kind of things to come, or is it just me overthinking? And yeah, ripe stars, let me know in the comments what you think about this. I would say it is a huge red flag if your girlfriend or boyfriend is talking to her friends about leaving you to find someone better, even if it is just in theory. Anyway, update, I didn't feel the need to make an entirely different post for the update, so here it is. I left early in the morning to make sure I was not making any irrational choices. When I came back, she was immediately apologetic, but I did not want any more apologies. I talked to her about how little respect she had for me, that she felt the need to make jokes at my expense. She started crying and begging not to break up and feeding me the standard BS people say when they don't want to break up. To not bore you with the details, I broke it off. I lose nothing at this point. I should clarify though something from my initial post. I get that people can joke around and it doesn't mean anything, but when I confronted her about it, she denied it and got very defensive. That is the part that got to me, the fact that she tried to cover it up before apologizing. I read all the comments and thank you. Update to the story. So even after breaking up with my girlfriend, I was doubting if I made the right decision. I was not going to update because I didn't see a reason to do it, but after the last couple days I came to a final conclusion. I want to clarify that I broke up with my girlfriend because of how easy it was for her to disrespect me behind my back, not because of the actual height difference. After I broke up with her, she continued to apologize to me. She would send me letters and call me a lot. In one of the texts I actually responded to, she asked if we could meet up and talk. Without going into too much detail, she wanted a second chance and overall sounded very remorseful. I was about to agree, but something she said made me realize that I would be making a mistake if I did. She said, "I remember to respect from now on." That sentence made me realize that I made the right choice by breaking up. Since when do you have to be reminded to have the bare minimum of respect for your partner? Either way, I'm glad I did not give her a second chance. I don't know if any of you care at this point, but there's the update. On a side note though, the other day I was hanging out with one of my female friends who happens to be taller, and I guess she saw us and started texting me that she does not need me, started saying that my friend was a pig and that I moved on too fast. I blocked her and had a laugh. I know for a fact that I made the right choice. And the next one is a petty revenge story. Back when I was in my mid-20s, I bought my first place to live. Nothing great, it was just a trailer house, but it was mine. My neighbors were okay for the first few months, and then one day I was hearing banging on my walls. The kids on one side were using my outside wall to constantly bounce tennis balls off. It drove me nuts. I talked to the neighbor and they said, "Kids will be kids," and didn't put a stop to it. I decided it's time to do something after a few days and got a set of extremely loud air horns like they use on trains and semi-trucks. I put them under the skirting. The next time the kids started, I hooked up the air hose from my air compressor and opened the valve. The kids screamed and ran crying. I was crying from laughing so hard. The parents were pissed off and came over, making threats and yelling at me. The second petty revenge I got was one night I hid a wireless battery-powered doorbell under their stairs and I'd randomly pushed a button to ring it. Their dogs would go crazy barking and running around. I changed the batteries, that thing, about a dozen times. I used it so much. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. So this happened around 9 years ago when I was 26. Abbreviations for the story: OP, my name, AH, a-hole neighbor's name, RG, random guest of Airbnb. So that winter I had lost my wife to an accident and it had me spiraling down a nasty phase of depression. I am a graphic designer for a local company in my area, but after this sudden change in my life, my parents urged me to move back to my hometown. I had been offered a job there, which I had previously declined because I wanted to live close to my wife. But after losing her so suddenly, I knew a change of place was necessary. I moved to my hometown, started spending time with my parents to fight this feeling of loneliness, and even went to a therapist. By the time my contract was up, 1 year had gone by and I was in a much better place than before. I also had realized over time that even though it hurt to live in that house, I could not just abandon the place that my wife worked to build. So I packed my bags and moved back, and guess what did I find? Not my house for sure, because where was supposed to be my house was now a whole reconstructed area. There was now a frickin' pool where once was a garden that me and my wife tended to, and the whole pathway from the road to the garage was now covered in grass, and the large metal gateway to my property was replaced with a much smaller iron gate. Also, the fence that separated my property from AN's property was now gone. It did not take a genius to figure out what had happened. Me, hey! I scream as I barge in through the iron gate. A few people come out of my house much younger than me, but hopefully of legal age because I could smell the alcohol from a mile away. Who let you in here? RG, who the F are you, man? Stay back or I'm calling the police. Me, call them. You are on my property. This is my damn house. RG and his friends take a step back inside my house, clearly intimidated but also confused. I hear them whispering to each other again before the tallest one starts speaking. RG, listen, I don't know what you're talking about. We booked this place on Airbnb and it was listed as AN's guest house. Look, we even got these keys from him yesterday morning. I look at the keys and they don't seem familiar at all. How could it be anyway, since I did not leave any kind of key behind? I rub my forehead trying not to explode on these wasted young adults. Me, call AN here right now. I see RG turn back around to his friends who all seem much more awake now. RG, are you gonna call the police? Me, if you're here through Airbnb, then I will not get you involved. But this property is mine and I will call the police on AN. More whisperings and I see most of his friends run inside. I want to follow them to make sure they don't break anything, but that just seems fruitless. RG, hey, can we all move out before you call the police? I will call AN for you, but then can me and my friends go, please? Me, realizing that they are not legal enough to drink, but I could care less because too much was already happening, just call AN. RG nods and dials a number. Only a few minutes later, I hear the door to the neighbor's house open. RG gestures to the AN and turns back to his friends who are now all holding their stuff haphazardly. I don't even care as they rush off, too busy glaring at AN as I walk up to him. I can see his eyes widen as soon as he sees me, but I don't let him turn around. I take a hold of his collar and punch him right in his stupid face. Me? What did you do to my house? I'm throwing one punch after another, creating enough ruckus that I catch the attention of few of my neighbors. A couple then rushed inside unfamiliar to me and starts to pull me back, giving AN enough time to dial for police. Me? Call them, you a-hole. I will make sure you rot in jail. I am struggling in the stronghold of this couple when I hear a familiar voice calling my name, helping me get free of the tight grip that was holding me back. I start shouting at AN and he is shouting back at me, making me want to punch him, but I knew I needed to hold back. The police arrive half an hour later. Officer, we received a call from Mr. AN. What's going on here? AN, I called you, officer. This lunatic was trespassing on my property and when I tried to stop him, he started punching me. Me raising my fists to punch this idiot. Officer, this is my property, this is my house and this is my garden. I'm returning home after a year and in this time this a-hole destroyed my property and merged it into his own. Officer, okay sir, I will listen to you. But you need to calm down first. Turns to AN, do you have documents that you own this entire plot? I could see AN sweating, but he still nods and rushes inside his house. The officer then turns to me and asks the same question. Me, all my papers were inside my house. I already know AN would have either destroyed them or hid them. And to be honest with how he is acting, he also probably forged the documents he's gonna show. The officer gives me a suspicious look before my neighbor from before stepped forward. Neighbor, I have them. I look at my neighbor in confusion as the officer asks him to continue. Neighbor, I've been living here for 3 years now since OP and his wife moved in. Last year, after he moved out, I started excavating his garden and reconstructing the entire place. I thought maybe he was gone for good and sold his property, but then one day when I was taking out the trash, I found a bundle of files near the dumpster outside. I would have ignored it, but then I saw OP and his wife's name on it. The document was legalizing their documents. I feel myself boiling with rage. This idiot had thrown out my marriage certificate. I turned to look at the neighbor who gave me a sympathetic look before turning back to the officer. Neighbor, I found that suspicious and I started digging up the files. Amidst them, I found the document for this land and even other things like electricity bills and whatnot. Officer, do you still have them? Neighbor, yes, I even have pictures of when AN was reconstructing everything. I even tried contacting OP, but I could not reach him. Me, I changed my number after moving. God, I knew it was a bad idea. Officer notes everything down. If you have the evidence, then the case should not be difficult. We turn back and when AN finally comes out, documents held tightly in his hands. Officer takes them and looks them over before telling AN that he will try his best to protect the true owner's rights. AN then starts smiling all smug, not noticing the small gesture this officer sent to his partner. I watch with a satisfied smirk as this idiot is pinned to the ground and handcuffed. The officer tells him that this was the sloppiest case of forgery he had ever seen, and I laugh as AN turns 10 shades of red. Officer, but no matter how straightforward this case seems, I still need the original documents. Until that is resolved, I will have to restrict this property. I not feeling solemn that I could not even get in my own house, but then my neighbor pats me on the back. Neighbor, you can stay with me until then. Apparently my neighbor also felt guilty for not being able to inform me about everything that was happening to my property. I can't blame him though, I had left so abruptly without any information, but luckily he still looked out for me, and after a week of compromising with the police, I finally got to enter my house again. AN was charged with document forgery, private property destruction, and illegal building. It all cumulated into a hefty $300,000 fine that he had to pay me within 18 months. With that, I was able to restore my house back to how it once was, redesigning my garden completely and even dedicating a patch to my wife where I grew her favorite flowers. And yeah guys, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. And also check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on Spotify, Amazon, Audible, and other podcast platforms. You will often find exclusive episodes and early access to new content. Furthermore, please check out my Patreon by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or my YouTube membership program for even more exclusive stories. Thank you so much, and I will see you again tomorrow.